At the heart of our galaxy, far beyond the scatter of stars we call home, there is a silence so dense it bends light. Sagittarius A asterisk, a name assigned to what was once only a radio whisper, now sits confirmed. A supermassive black hole, millions of solar masses wide, cloaked in darkness, nestled at the Milky Way's core. For decades, it was classified as dormant, quiet, a gravitational anchor rather than a threat. But in space, stillness is never simple. It's camouflage. The Event Horizon Telescope, a global lens stitched together by continents, caught something it shouldn't have. Not flares, not eruptions, but motion, micro-movements in the stars nearest the galactic core. Tiny orbital contractions, not enough to signal collapse, but enough to suggest change. And these weren't new stars adjusting course. These were ancient giants, stars that had held near-perfect orbits for eons, now tightening, inch by inch, as if being whispered to. Across the spiral arms, Gaia, the European Space Agency's most precise stellar mapper, logged deviations. Not random, not explosive, systemic, motion that didn't obey conventional galactic drift. A subtle curvature in orbital paths across thousands of light years. It was as though something vast, yet unseen, was nudging everything inward. Not with force, but with intention. In the control rooms of observatories from Chile to Hawaii, the numbers felt off. Not in scale, but in rhythm. The math still worked, but it pulsed. A slow shift in the beat of galactic mechanics. For every data correction made, another appeared, as if reality itself was bending to keep up with its own redefinition. The Milky Way wasn't flattening, it was curling, drawing closer to something at its core that had stopped being passive. Simulations were rerun, the most accurate ones, those that modeled Sagittarius A asterisk as quiescent, failed to match the new data. Only when the black hole was given agency, when it was allowed to pull, not merely sit, did the orbits align. But even then, something was missing. No heat, no X-ray flares, just gravity, pure, silent gravity. One astrophysicist compared it to watching a whirlpool without water. You see nothing move, until you realize the current is already under your feet. The stars weren't orbiting, not in the way we thought. They were descending, gracefully, slowly, spiraling inward with the kind of elegance that only occurs in nature when something inevitable has already begun. And then the infrared maps came in, cool zones forming along the inner galactic ring, temperatures dropping where tidal forces should heat them. Starbirth slowed, gas compression paused. The Milky Way wasn't just drifting, it was surrendering, not to entropy, but to shape, the shape of a fall. Because what we call a galaxy, a brilliant spinning island of stars, is perhaps just the surface of something deeper, something coiled around a single, invisible mouth at its heart, not flaring, not feeding, just breathing and waiting. In that dark, gravity does not roar. It whispers, and the whisper, once thought too faint to matter, has now become a current. One no star resists. It begins not in a lab, but in a footnote, a paper buried beneath better-funded research, dated 2007. Its title was forgettable, its conclusion quietly heretical. It proposed that spiral galaxies like ours were not stable structures, but metastable ones. Beautiful, elegant, and destined to turn against themselves. The idea was called gravitational funneling. Not collision, not merger, just a shape, so perfectly curved, it lured its own mass inward. At the time, it was dismissed. No observational support, no chaos. The stars were still shining, and Sagittarius A asterisk was quiet. But now, 18 years later, the math is different. Gaia's orbital precision has changed the rules. And when that same 2007 model is rerun with updated parameters, it no longer breaks. It converges. The new simulation shows what the old one feared. That spiral arms are not balance. They are residue, tidal drag across billions of years. Each arm, a trail of matter caught in a slow, torqued descent. The ends don't reach outward. They curve inward, like water down a drain too wide to see. And then, another layer. The model incorporates interstellar dust flow and gas cloud migration. And what emerges is startling. Not turbulence, not dispersion, but flow. A slow, coherent drift from the outer halo toward the core. Not pulled, not pushed, aligned, as if the shape of the galaxy is not incidental, but deliberate. Its spiral a blueprint, a funnel drawn in stars. The paper's author, Dr. Lis Novak, long retired, had once called it a tidal scream, a phrase dismissed as poetic. But now, when plugged into the simulation's sound mapping software, the model generates a low-frequency harmonic. Not audio, a waveform, resonating across the entire disk, like a song in slow motion. A song whose only lyric is descent. In that model, nothing explodes, nothing collides. Instead, everything slowly slides. Each orbit just slightly more oval than the last. Each mass just slightly closer to the curve. The shape is perfect. Too perfect. Not natural, not chaotic, but committed to collapse. And when these simulations are compared to real archival data, the match is eerie. Pulsar trails, star cluster drift, the Milky Way's velocity curve, it all fits, as if the galaxy has been following a recipe older than its stars. One that ends not in destruction, but in consumption. The deeper implication begins to echo. What if spiral galaxies aren't structures? What if they're processes, engines, designed, not by mind, but by physics, to move matter inward, slowly, beautifully, inevitably, and then a final anomaly, a gravity wave simulation run backward, not forward into time, but back toward the galaxy's formation. The spiral doesn't emerge from chaos. It tightens from randomness, like a rope winding inward. The Milky Way didn't evolve into a spiral. It was born falling, a scream without sound, an equation no one believed, a shape mistaken for symmetry, when it was really entropy wearing a mask. The spiral turns, and in the center, something waits. Lensing is supposed to curve. When light passes near a gravity well, it bends. That's the rule. That's the signature. That's how we know black holes exist at all. But the rules near Sagittarius A asterisk have started to blur. In the control rooms of space observatories across Earth, teams begin noticing a drift, not in stars, but in signals. Lensing data around the galactic center is no longer producing symmetrical arcs. The light bends, but then breaks. Not violently, not erratically, but inconsistently. A background star's image splits unevenly. Another fades entirely, despite no change in magnitude. Light isn't curving around Sagittarius A star. It's hesitating. Satellite feeds are rechecked, corrected, rechecked again. But the glitch isn't in the sensors. It's in the space between. Infrared readings deepen the mystery. Where ionized gas should glow with friction and heat, it instead cools. Filaments of matter fall inward, but instead of igniting, they darken, like warmth being drained or hidden. As the models adapt, a new shape emerges. Not a flare, not a jet, but a layer, thin, expanding, a translucent envelope, barely perceptible, like the shimmer above asphalt on a hot day. It isn't radiating, it isn't spinning, it's forming, slowly, perfectly spherical, One physicist, running magnetogravity projections, gives it a name: the consumption shell. Not an accretion disk, not an event horizon, but a boundary forming outside the black hole. A field where space-time becomes biased, tilted inward, like a table turned just slightly. Anything that crosses it doesn't fall. It drifts, as if being invited in. Radio telescopes tuned to background quasars begin picking up sudden silence. Whole windows of observation blank. The signals don't scatter. They're not blocked. They simply don't arrive. Light paths that should wrap around the galactic center are ending early, curving less, then not at all, and then something worse. A spiral galaxy behind Sagittarius A asterisk, once a beautiful arc, begins to collapse into a point. Not because it's moving, but because its light no longer spreads. The consumption shell has reached it. Astrophysicists stare in disbelief. What they once thought was a black hole feeding gently from its surroundings is instead forming an edge. Not around itself, but around its influence. Not a pole, but a slope. A soft trap that space itself can't resist. The outer stars of the Milky Way remain untouched. For now, but they too begin to drift. Simulations show that the spiral arms have subtly begun leaning inward. Not pulled, not torn, but guided. As if by design, because perhaps the center isn't growing at all. The galaxy is shrinking, curling inward like paper near a flame. Not fast, not catastrophic, but constant. The signals don't just stop bending. They stop returning. It doesn't start with us. It never did. Astronomers widen their gaze beyond the Milky Way. They turn their instruments toward Andromeda, toward Messier 81, toward NGC 7331. Galaxies of grandeur. Spiral arms traced in starlight. Each a cosmic cathedral. But in the numbers, there is drift. Spectroscopic data reveals a tilt in their rotational curves. Imperceptible at first, but undeniable when layered. Their outer arms are not flat, not stable. They bow inward, subtly, obediently, as if pulled not from outside, but from within. Their central bulges brighten, quietly, consistently, not from starburst, but from feed. Something at the heart of each one is warming, gathering, waiting, the same anomalies that plague our galactic center. Flickering lensing, silent signal corridors, cooling clouds, begin to echo in galaxies millions of light years away. Like variations on the same melody, a quiet symphony of descent. One researcher maps the alignments across the Virgo supercluster. What emerges is chilling, not chaos, not coincidence, but pattern. Each spiral galaxy curves inward with uncanny symmetry. Each one harbors a supermassive black hole. Each one brightens, darkens, flickers in rhythm. The narration slows. What if these aren't galaxies with black holes? What if they are for them? Not built to survive, but shaped to fall. Spirals aren't evolution. They're choreography. A long, slow collapse. Not violent, not sudden, but final. The spiral is not a structure. It is a process, a funnel, and we are already inside it. The Milky Way, beautiful, vast, and glimmering, is not suspended in balance. It is winding down, coiling inward like smoke caught in reverse, and at its center waits not a void, but an inevitability. There is no escape velocity, because we were never held. We were always falling,